Clocks, 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 clocks. Time is everywhere and controls your every move. Well, we think about time all the time, and we talk about it too. And we're going to talk about it right now, or in a few seconds. That means lots of useful English words and phrases like the fourth dimension. What time do you make it? The film starts at 2100 hours. It's coming up to 2. Have a 6 a.m. start. End up going to bed at stupid o'clock. An early bird, a night owl, and many, many more. So yeah, let's talk about time. Yep, time. Otherwise known as the fourth dimension. If you sit down and think about it enough, time is super weird. It's already confusing enough with the fact that it only moves forwards, we can't touch it or eat it or talk to it, and in the world we have no fewer than 24 time zones. I find this confusing. I mean, how do you remember whether California is ahead 5 hours or behind 21 hours? I mean, is it Tuesday there now or what? Do they still have dinosaurs? I mean, at least California is separated by full hours, but not everywhere is. In fact, at least 7 countries and a bunch of random Australian and New Zealand states are hours and a half, or even hours and 45 minutes. Seriously, Nepal, what are you doing? Ahead or behind UTC. That's Coordinated Universal Time, which is based in Greenwich, London, the place where time was first discovered. No, just kidding. It's where the old-fashioned English people decided we should all refer to when setting our clocks. No one argued. They owned a third of the world at the time. But how do we ask about the time? How do we tell it? I mean, sure, you know the basics.
Hello, what time is it? It's 4 o'clock. Thank you, kind sir. Good day.
But is that how we really speak? No, not all the time is the answer to that question. I mean, we learn at school that we can ask questions like, what time is it? Or even, excuse me, but can you tell me what time it is? But we also say stuff like, got the time on you? Or what time do you make it? As if we're still making time, like those Greenwich people. And how do you answer this question? Well, obviously, by telling the time. You tell them the answer. So you could say something like it's 25 past 3, or it's 10 to 7, or my personal favourite time, it's 2 to 2. Or you could go digital, if you like, which is easier and allows you to be more precise without sounding weird. So you can say 3:25 or 7:10 or 1:58. But how do we know if it's AM or PM? Well, that's easy. You just say it. You can just say 3:25 a.m. or 25 past 3 p.m. or 2 to 2 p.m. Don't like AM or PM? Fine. Say in the morning or in the afternoon or in the evening or at night instead. 3:25 in the morning, 1:58 at night, 2 to 2 in the afternoon, and well, yeah, you get the idea. But what about this one? That awkward 0. How do we deal with that? Well, with an O. So you say 8:08 or 11:04 or 1:01. You can also use 24-hour time and say stuff like 13:30 or 16:17. But this starts to get weird, especially when it comes to the o'clocks. And you're forced to say the film starts at 2100 hours, or it's 0700 hours, or we watched the giraffe tennis until 2200 hours. Yeah, this sounds weird and is only really used by people in the military or people who just really wish they were in the military.
What time are you going, Mike?
2100 hours. That's 9 o'clock.
Right. Would you mind taking Colin for a walk about 8?
That's 2000 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
But most of the time, we know what time of day it is, right? I mean, we know whether it's morning or evening or afternoon or night. Just look out the window. Is it dark? Nope. Then probably not night. Yeah, these times of day indicators are really just useful when you're describing something that, happened in the past or when you're making plans for the future. So you might say something like, let's meet at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Or, I finally finished work at 10 p.m. But what if we want to be less precise? I mean, if it's 2 to 2, do you actually say 2 to 2? Probably not. you probably say something like, it's almost 2, or it's nearly 2, or it's coming up to 2. If it's 2 past 2, then you might say something like, it's just gone 2, or it's just after 2. And if you want to be super chill, you can use the suffix ish. So you can say, yeah, it's 2-ish, or let's meet up around 5-ish, or I usually wake up at 7-ish, unless it's the weekend. Or just use around or about. It's about past. I'll see you at around 4:30. We're leaving at around 10:02. Notice, by the way, that we don't really need to say the hour every time. past, 10:02. Again, like with the time of day, we're usually aware of what hour we're talking about. And if we're aware, then we don't need to say it. Sometimes we want to be even more general about the time. We want to talk about the time, but not with numbers. We want to express how we feel about the time. So if you've been woken up by your 10-year-old daughter doing some late night trumpet practice at 3 a.m., you can storm into her room and shout, "What kind of time do you call this?" It's not a real question, is it? I mean, we know. No, this basically means it's late and I'm angry. You might want to add, it's the middle of the night, which is fair enough. I mean, whether it's 2 a.m. or 4 a.m., it doesn't matter. There's a kid playing trumpet in the next room and you want to sleep now, especially since you have a 6 a.m. start in the morning. Sometimes we get to bed later than we plan to. Maybe we're out with friends and having a great night out, or we're binge watching a Netflix series, or absorbed in a great book and reading into the small hours, those times that start with 1 or 4, 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, those small numbers, in other words, very late. Time gets away from you and you end up going to bed at stupid o'clock. That's just much later than sensible. When it's super late, or when it's crazy early in the morning, which can be the same thing, you might decide that it's some godforsaken hour. So you might need to get up at some godforsaken hour for that cheap early morning flight. Or after losing your wallet and having to walk 9 miles home, you might finally get back home at some godforsaken hour, much later than you'd like, when even the weird party animal next door has gone to bed. All this talk of time is well and good, but have you ever thought about how time even exists in the first place? I mean, what is time? Essentially, it's just a way of dividing the year and the months up, figuring a way to keep track of that point where we do one full cycle around the sun and start off again where we left off. And the history of how we decided to do this is actually really impressive. In fact, the first timekeeping devices are thought to go back to, who else? Our friends, the ancient Egyptians, with a sort of simple T-square that they used to measure the shadows, basically the precursor to the sundial, which we still see in cute little European gardens today. Moving on from that, we also started measuring time with water clocks. Again, you can thank the Egyptians for this one. They were pretty accurate, but apparently were a pain in the neck to maintain. I think you just needed to keep them full of water all the time. We also had hourglasses, which were more like old school stopwatches, something that you can use to quantify time periods. The first mechanical clocks turned up in the 11th century and were invented in China. Since then, timekeeping has been getting more and more precise, with the invention of pendulum clocks and all the way to the atomic clocks, whose creators claim can be accurate for millions of years. Wait a second. That's an easy claim to make, millions of years. I mean, how can we test that? How can we check that? We don't have a time machine. They can say anything. Could be billions of years, you could say. I mean, if you're going to say millions of years, just say billions of years. No one will ever know. Anyway, one more fun thing about clocks before we finish. After the French Revolution, they decided to de-Christianize the way that they told time. For some reason, the whole 24-hour thing was just a little bit too religious for these guys. So what did they do? They decided to make time decimal. Yep, Everything was measured in tens. So 1 day had 10 hours, 1 hour had 100 minutes, and 1 minute had 100 seconds. This meant that when it was 4 o'clock in decimal time, it was actually 9:36 for normal people. 8 o'clock was 7:12, and 1 o'clock was 2:24. In fact, the only time that was the same was midnight. But not for long, considering that there are 0.000277778 decimal seconds in 1 second. Unsurprisingly, this system was abandoned around a decade after it was first introduced, and no one ever talked about it again. And there we have it, time. More interesting than you thought, right? But yeah, tell me about yourself. Are you an early bird? Do you get up at the crack of dawn ready to confront the day? Or are you a night owl, staying up into the small hours? Let me know in the comments, and yeah, let's talk about time. Meanwhile, you know what I'm going to say, right? Because if you like time, then you'll like these buttons I've discovered. You can find them usually like below YouTube videos. But yeah, if you're a fan of time and clocks and stuff like that, I can't remember the names of these buttons, Bubskib or a bike, something like that. Maybe like, I think it was like. But yeah, if you hit them, then you can travel through time by the amount of time it takes you to hit the buttons. So yeah, if you hit subscribe and if you hit like, you move forward very slowly in time. It's true. But yeah, meanwhile, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, because I did. And yeah, I'll see you next time.